So why do we want to do this? Well, that really depends on who you ask. If you ask my department chair, the Ag Institute director, so that it can show that you get a good return on investment, and we can recruit students as they're thinking about 2-year versus 4-year or school time. If you ask our dean, it would be so that we could get more funding into the university. But honestly, neither of those motivate me. What motivates me as an instructor, probably y'all, is things like having a bad day with teaching students and then wondering, is this really worthwhile? Was this the right career decision? Am I actually training students to get a degree that's a waste of time or money? Or worse yet, I see something like this, an infographic from the Visual Capitalist that came out last week that said that it was ranking the most educated countries, but when I looked at how they defined educated, it was the percent of people in the country the percent of adults that had a bachelor's degree. So does that mean that the associate's degree that we're training them to get means we're leaving them uneducated? So we spend a ton of our energy honing our craft as instructors. People like Karl, Kayla, and others spend a lot of their energy advising students to ensure that they complete the entire degree program. And we want, at the end of the day, to feel like the work that we're doing is valuable. And on bad days, we need some numbers to convince ourselves. And so that's why we went with the economic one. Last year at this conference, Karl presented some of the personal and professional benefits of having our 2-year Ag Institute degree. And that came out of this survey where, by the way, our program's been around for 65 years. And so here on the x-axis, I'm graphing the year that our alumni graduated from the program. And we've had a whole lot of alumni, over 6,200 to date. And just direct your attention to the red slivers, which are the actual alums who answered our survey. So we had a good spread across time. As other surveys that I've seen presented at this conference, we had only a 6% response rate. So 4,000 were surveyed and 271 surveys were returned. As you might expect, there was an increasing trend in response rate with graduation year, so the more recent alums naturally responded more. This survey was conducted over Qualtrics, so you have to be, looking at your email and be willing to, tap through the answers. The difficult thing when trying to figure out what the impact of your program is, on economically or otherwise, is that there is no counterfactual. We can't suddenly stop the Ag Institute for 10 years and say, well, let's see how much the North Carolina economy suffers, right? Nor can you go back in time to the 1960s and say, well, how much did it benefit North Carolina from 1959 to 63? Because that's not really relevant until to today. And so we came up with a somewhat innovative first question in our survey, which was, if you hadn't enrolled in the Ag Institute, so think back to the time when you were choosing what to do after high school or before college, what would you have done instead? What was your most likely alternative? And this actually scared away 13% of our survey respondents. Karl was warning me about that. Karl did not like this question to be number one, but I was really pushy, and this is so important. Almost 40% of our survey respondents said that they would not have gone to college at all. And so we can scale that result up, we can scale it across time, across all our alums, and say, well, over 2,000 people today would have no college degree, no college education at all if it hadn't been for the Ag Institute, because they would have gone to work for their dad or on the family farm, or just gone straight to work with some other farm. That's a tough number to get your head around, but if I would like to think about graduation ceremony every year, I can look out, and Amy and Karl and other colleagues here can look out at the audience in that Stewart Theater every year and say, out of all those people with their caps and gowns, 38 of them would not have gone to college at all. And so that alone is a very uplifting number to kind of keep in the back of our minds. The corollary to that is that about one person per year would not have gotten a bachelor's degree, because some of our students, and by the way, this is the same students who answered that they wouldn't have gone to college at all. So a fraction of them go on and do a bachelor's, a fraction of that continue on to a master's and higher. We also, much later in the survey, asked a qualitative, so I guess this is a mixed methods survey. We asked a qualitative counterfactual, question number 17. If they could summarize how their life would be different. We got a variety of very interesting responses. There was some temporal trend in those answers. So our very earliest graduates said that they would have had less independence. They would have been basically under the thumb of their dad or granddad. Some said they would have been a lot poorer. More recent graduates talked about how the Ag Institute degree led them to, was the only way they could have been qualified for their first job, which then had a domino effect for them getting their second job and onward up. And now you look at their end of their survey and ask them, well, what's your title today? I'm the vice president of sales for this insurance company, like all across the Southeast. And then our very most recent graduates, up till 2015, I looked at, and they were talking more about how they're able to navigate their businesses through economic downturns like the 2000 financial crisis. I want you to remember this pie chart for a second, the same one I showed earlier, this purple 38% that led me to my first result. And you might look at that and wonder, well, gosh, you did say that more people answered your survey that were recent graduates than the very old graduates. Are you sure that 38% is a robust result? And you would be right to have that question, because in the 4 middle decades of our alums, we were sampling them evenly. In the earliest decade, the 62, 72, in the most recent decade, there's a big whopping difference. Luckily, we can dissect the survey results to that degree. So here's the same pie chart colors, but now instead of a pie chart, we're turning it into a sketch stack bar, and we're looking at how that purple portion of the graph changes over time. And what you can see is whether you look at the most furthest back decade or the most recent decade, there really wasn't a difference in what fraction of them would not have gone to college had they not come to the Ag Institute. So that was a pretty robust result. However, if we look at the green shading now, that is that the students that would have gone to community college or vocational training, there is an increasing trend. In the 2 most recent decades, community college was one of the most common alternatives. So let's look at that. Focusing on students that graduated since 2003, we see that a little over a third of them would have opted for community college or trade school had they not come to the Ag Institute. And so this begs the questions, how would their educational outcomes have been different had they gone to community college? What is their likelihood of having completed an associate's degree? Would they have transferred to a bachelor? Would they have completed the bachelor's? And then can we compare that to how they actually did when they came to the Ag Institute? So here's the community college counterfactual. Imagine that 100 of our Ag Institute students had chosen community college. Then spend 36 hours with my head spinning around and looking at every possible database on North Carolina community college system to develop this sort of Plinko chart, right? So 21% would have earned their associates, 14% would have transferred without an associate's into a bachelor's program, but only 5 of those would have gotten a bachelor's. The other 9 would have earned no degree, because these are just statistics that I could pull from various different databases. Bottom line is 11% would have earned an associate's and joined the workforce. That is 11% of community college students that were enrolled as first-time, full-time associate's degree earners. 74% would have earned no degree, and 15 would have earned their bachelor's. Of course, those 100 students did not go to community college, they came to our program. And so we can compare directly against our graduation retention data and see how did they actually do. And the big flip is that 53% of our students actually earn their associates, and only 32% drop out with no degree. So what's the bottom line? Here's that first result for 38% that would not have gone to college at all. Here's that second result, 34% would have gone to community college, but only 42% of that 34% would have completed their degree. We add those two together, we see that more than half of our graduates would have had no college degree had not been for the Ag Institute. now we can get our jollies off of scaling that result up using a variety of secondary data. I chose this particular study, and I invite people from the audience to point me to better resources. I even went to ChatGPT and found different sources that way. But here are the overall impacts of our degree program, just focused on students that graduated in the last 2 decades, which translates fairly well to the students that are in the program right now. So my boss can use it for his recruiting, our dean can use it for gathering more funding. And the grand total is that we would have about a $2.5 million benefit. We are having a $2.4 million benefit to the economy for every cohort year that comes into our program. So is that a big number, a small number? That's above my pay grade. But hopefully, just going through this process and the thought of it is something that maybe if you wanted to do something similar in your colleges, you could quantify what the benefit is for you, and you could use it, your dean could use it to defend against the state legislature or against whichever new chancellor is trying to cut your program, which happens every time at NC State when there's a new chancellor, dean, or provost. They go, why are we offering an associate's degree at NC State University? Aren't we a R1 bachelor, master, PhD? Isn't that the job of community colleges? And so we have one little piece of ammunition to defend. With that, I want to thank all the others that contributed to this study and take any questions.
So do you know why the success rate at your institute is so much higher than the junior colleges? Because that's really the difference here, right? What are you doing that they're not doing?
Many things. And
that's a long
We have Sean, who is an
Yeah.
awesome instructor.
Aside from you,
I can take all that credit. No. There's so many differences. So I would say, and this would be another study in itself, but I think the main difference is the community colleges in North Carolina largely are commuter schools. Students that go there, even if they're enrolled as full-time students, are going back home and are probably nudged much more than our students are to work a 20-hour-a-week job or transition into the workforce even sooner, leading them to change from being full-time students to part-time students much quicker than our students do, and then that leads to 74% of them never earning it. But on the flip side, there's a tremendous amount of effort made by our faculty. Karl spends maybe 15 hours a week during the semester, every semester, meeting with students whose GPA is like 1.9 and below. And he points out to them every little way that he can think of that'll help them make it to this side of the Blinko chart. And he's highly successful at that. And I don't think community colleges have that level of resource investment in pushing people from here over to here. So those are 2 factors I can think of off the top of my head.
We have a smaller student body in our program, and it's, like you said, a combination. They're there on campus, they get to take part in nearly all the benefits of being at a 4-year.
Sorry, Jonathan and Amy, or what Jonathan's up the door, are also those advisors that advise
Yes.
our crop science and our ag business students.
Yeah.
I am not an advisor, I'm the one that's failing them in math.
But they get a lot of one-on-one focus. We have wonderful people like Kayla that they can always come see when things really go the wrong way.
It seems like most of us would get a lot of pushback from the junior colleges if we tried to do this in our state.
Yeah.
Politically, yes.
Oh yeah, that's the rub.
I've got a curiosity. Are you fact checking your marriage rate? I feel like that's fairly easy to do.
That was something that came up with the students that responded to the survey, that we were shocked that was, still at the bottom, but pretty far up the list of benefits when they talk about significant things that happened to them while they're at the Ag Institute. I met my spouse. I was at the Ag Institute, so that was actually based off of survey responses.
We also had surveyors say they would have been in jail We ended the literature.
That was a focus
We
group.
reduce incarceration by getting people on the left side of the political chart.
I would really love if you could come back in 3 years with updated numbers on the marriage statistic, just
Yep.
putting a plug in, your post-graduation survey. Did you get married? Did you meet her here, in here? I'd love that personally.
We actually just had a couple get married a couple weekends ago, and they met in our program.
Yep.
Yep.
And it was such a neat survey because look at the number. We got people from the very first